The Coalition observation deck hummed with the quiet efficiency of stellar mapping. Then lead astronomer Vrenkal's hollow tablet flared with readings that screamed impossibility.
Oxygen at this concentration, across a 50-light-year stellar nursery. It defies physics. Recalibrate the spectrographics. All of them. I want every sensor triple-checked.
The recalibration ran for 14 tense minutes. When the new data streamed in, the numbers were identical, the spectral signatures unmistakable.
This is not an error. This is engineered. Someone is making an atmosphere. Get me Earth on an open channel. Immediately.
The channel opened before the entire Coalition survey team. Every alien watched in silence as the signal connected.
Earth, this is lead astronomer Vrenkal. You will explain the atmospheric oxygen levels within the Vela Nebula. This is not a request.
The human voice that answered was soft, calm, almost carrying a smile. Oh, that. We started that project in 1887. It's coming along nicely. Thanks for noticing.
They've been doing this for 500 years. 500 years.
The view screen flickered, and a human face appeared. An elderly woman with warm eyes, smiling as if she'd been expecting this call.
Oh, that's our long project. We started in 1887. It's coming along nicely, thank you for noticing.
1887? That's pre-space flight. Pre-everything. The oldest human scripts, I recall, are barely a few centuries old. You expect me to believe this began before the steam engine?
The woman's smile didn't falter. She reached off screen and lifted a delicate blue flower into view.
Believe it or don't, dear. We've had a lot of time to watch the oxygen build. Now, would you like the detailed explanation?
She's not bluffing. There is a certainty in her voice that only absolute truth can carry. Yes. Start from the beginning. How does a species without faster-than-light travel seed a nebula?
Margaret nodded, cradling the flower, and behind her the vast green-gold arc of the Vela Nebula glowed on a holographic display.
Patience, mainly. And some very clever Victorians. It all began in Yorkshire, 1887, with a man named Arthur Greaves. Arthur Greaves was a quiet man, an astronomer at a small observatory no one funded. But he saw the Vela Nebula as more than a nursery. He saw a canvas. He calculated that engineered cyanobacteria released into the nebula would spread slowly and convert carbon dioxide into oxygen over centuries.
His journal detailed the entire sequence: probe design, launch windows, and the agonizingly slow drift across 50 light-years. The Royal Society dismissed it as late Victorian fantasy, but a private patron, impressed by the rigor, funded a quiet experiment.
They filed a patent in 1887, not for profit, but to establish a chain of intent, so that one day someone could stand before any authority and say, "This is ours."
A patent. Before powered flight. Before anything. They marked a nebula as property when steam was the height of technology, and your government supported this for all these centuries. A project that would not bear fruit for generations.
Supported? Barely. We kept it quiet. A long patience, but we never stopped. The first probes launched in 1903 from a Yorkshire field, fueled by hope.
And so, in 1903, a small rocket lifted from a rural English hillside, carrying the first canisters of cyanobacteria. It would take 184 years to reach its target. The planet that would one day be called Earth had just sent its first deliberate signal to the cosmos. We are not content with one world.
The probes were simple: a steel shell, a small propulsion module, and canisters of freeze-dried cyanobacteria. No AI, no advanced navigation, just a clockwork timer.
In a converted Yorkshire foundry, workers under gaslight assembled the probes. Each was a masterpiece of Victorian engineering.
A clockwork timer. In the cold of deep space. And they expected it to work after 2 centuries.
12 probes, each with a different cyanobacteria strain. Redundancy, you see. We couldn't afford a single point of failure.
But how could you test their viability? Stellar radiation, vacuum, these are lethal.
Greaves built pressure chambers that simulated nebula conditions. The cyanobacteria thrived. The math checked out.
The probes were not fast. They drifted at sublight speeds, crossing 4 decades of light years in just under 2 centuries.
2 centuries. They sent these machines into the void with no guarantee, only hope.
The first timer was set for 2087. None of the people who built it would live to see it function.
And on that appointed year, the first probe entered the Vela Nebula. Its clockwork timer, still ticking, began the release sequence. The probe's panels opened, releasing a cloud of microscopic cyanobacteria into the nebula. They began to feed on carbon dioxide, multiplying in the cosmic nursery. Decade by decade, the bacteria spread along the nebula's currents. By 2087, the first faint oxygen bloom appeared on Earth's distant spectrographs.
They waited. They watched the spectrographs for a century, knowing their ancestors had launched this.
By 2187, the oxygen had reached atmosphere-grade concentrations in pockets. The nebula glowed a new shade, blue-green, the color of habitability. Planetesimals within the nebula began to coalesce, their surfaces sterilized. Then, seeded by the drifting bacteria, 4 protoplanets took shape.
4 worlds. They made 4 worlds without ever leaving their system.
And still the process continued. By 2387, 14 protoplanets orbited within the 50-light-year cloud, each with breathable air. The nebula, once a pristine stellar nursery, now held more habitable worlds than some galactic sectors, all bearing the signature of ancient Earth.
This is the largest terraforming event in recorded history, and it was done by a race that had not yet left their planet.
And somewhere on Earth, in a quiet office, Margaret smiled and watered her blue flower. The news of the Vela Nebula's transformation spread through the coalition like a shockwave. Within hours, an emergency session was called.
Delegates, what Earth has done is unprecedented. A 50-light-year region, terraformed into a garden. It contains 14 habitable worlds. We must decide, does this belong to them, or to all of us?
The chamber erupted. Species who had never seen war argued over ownership of a nebula.
They're all terrified, not of the act, but of the patience it required.
The debate raged. Environmental concerns, legal precedents, the sheer scale. No one had ever claimed a stellar nursery before.
We can't let this set a precedent. If Earth owns a nebula because they seeded it before spaceflight, what next?
A vote was forced. The demand was simple. Earth must cease and hand over the Vela Nebula to the Galactic Commons.
And I am to deliver it. The one who discovered their miracle.
The demand was transmitted to Earth on an open channel. The Coalition waited for a response, but the silence felt like an answer in itself.
We have no intention of ceasing. The Vela Nebula is ours by right of a patent filed in 1887.
The screen split, and a sharp-eyed woman in a navy suit joined the call.
I am Harriet Vance, Earth's legal counsel. I am here to explain why your demand has no legal standing. The patent, granted by the British Crown, covers atmospheric seeding via slow probe distribution. It has been continuously maintained.
She projected the document itself. Yellowed parchment, red wax seal, the ornate cursive of Victorian Patent Office.
A human legal document from before spaceflight, claiming a nebula. And they've upheld it for 5 centuries.
Crown property law was inherited by the United Nations of Earth, and later the Terran Federation. The chain of title is unbroken.
Beside her, a holographic timeline appeared, tracing the patent's legal journey from 1887 to 2387.
The Coalition has no statute that predates our claim. You are asking us to surrender property we have held longer than your government has existed.
Margaret watched the Coalition delegates' faces shift from indignation to uncertainty. Earth was not asking. It was stating a legal fact. The coalition's legal team challenged the patent, arguing it was a pre-contact document that could not bind species who never consented to human law.
If we refuse a patent this old, we unravel every property claim based on pre-coalition agreements. The Krell mineral treaties would be void.
The Jula land deeds were recognized centuries after their signing. The Krell mineral rights, granted under their ancient monarchy, stand today. Our patent is no different.
She projected a timeline of galactic law precedents, each one reinforcing the principle of honoring pre-existing claims.
The Coalition's objection is noted, but precedent is clear. This court will hear the full evidentiary record. A trial date shall be set.
A pre-spaceflight patent, and now it will be judged by the highest court in the galaxy.
Outside the court, Harriet Vance met with Dr. Margaret. The trial was scheduled for 3 months hence.
Margaret, we'll need your testimony. You are the living link, the one who can make a 500-year project human.
I've been preparing for this since I took this post 50 years ago. The Victorians gave us the claim. I just need to tell the truth.
And so the stage was set for the most unusual property case in galactic history, one that would hinge on a Victorian inventor's patent for seeding a nebula. The day of the trial arrived. The Coalition Supreme Court chamber filled with delegates and reporters from across the galaxy.
Your Honor, the 1887 patent is not merely a historical curiosity. It is a living legal instrument, continuously maintained under Crown property law.
She projected the original parchment, the seal of Queen Victoria, and the subsequent legal transfers through the British Empire, United Nations, and Terran Federation.
Every registration, every inheritance was recorded. There is no gap in the chain of title.
The Coalition legal team listened intently as the historian authenticated each document, their earlier confidence beginning to fray. The historian confirmed the handwriting matched Greaves' journals. The seal was authentic, and the patent had never been revoked.
Is there any doubt as to the authenticity of this patent?
The historian answered without hesitation. The documents were beyond reproach.
The defense rests its documentary case. We call our next witness, Dr. Margaret.
Margaret rose from the gallery, still holding her blue flower. The arbiter leaned forward, his crystalline eyes narrowing. The arbiter motioned for Margaret to begin. She settled into the witness chair, the blue flower resting on her lap.
After the probes launched, the Yorkshire Observatory never stopped watching. Generations tracked the nebula's transformation. By 2087, we saw the first oxygen blooms. Faint, but they confirmed Greaves' dream. The bacteria were working. We ran countless models, monitored every pocket of the nebula, ensuring no harm to the existing cosmic ecology. A 50-light-year nursery is vast. A project spanning centuries is natural to us. We have patience in our bones. The Edwardian dreamers who built those probes never saw the results. They trusted us, their descendants, to see it through.
She speaks of centuries as seasons. This is not ambition. It is a biological clock I cannot comprehend.
Dr. Margaret, your species' endurance is remarkable, but this court must know why. What drove you to invest so much?
Margaret looked down at the blue flower, then back at the arbiter. The question she had waited a lifetime to answer. The entire court held its breath. Margaret opened her mouth to speak.
Because we think in centuries. We thought 500 years ahead. It is not ambition. It is love for those who come after. Humans have always planted trees whose shade they would never sit under. This nebula was our forest.
The courtroom was silent. Even the Coalition delegates who had demanded the seizure of the nebula seemed frozen.
Greaves knew he would never see a single breath taken on those worlds, but he also knew that someone would.
They measure time in generations. Our laws feel temporary.
That's why we filed the patent. Not for a lawsuit, for a promise across time.
And then, for a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the soft hum of the court's crystalline ventilation.
The court will take a recess for deliberation. We will reconvene in 3 cycles.
The Coalition's legal team huddled, their earlier confidence shattered by a speech that made their arguments seem trivial. Margaret exited the witness stand, the blue flower still in her hand, and walked past the rows of alien faces, all staring at her with something new: respect. Tensions ran high in the Earth delegation's private chamber. Some argued for shared access. Others insisted the patent must be absolute.
If we compromise, we tell the galaxy that a 500-year commitment can be bought off with political pressure.
The debate raged for hours, but Margaret listened in heavy silence.
They fear us. Perhaps they should, but not for the wrong reasons.
She left the room, took a private shuttle to Yorkshire, and walked the moors alone.
I've given my life to this. No children, no partner, just a flower and a nebula. But Greaves gave his life too, and the thousands who followed. We cannot betray their sacrifice. Not now.
She returned to the delegation late that evening, the decision carved into her face.
We stand firm, Harriet, all of it. The patent, the claim, the 500 years.
The court reconvened in tense silence. The coalition's legal team argued that a pre-contact patent could never bind the galaxy.
Your Honor, this patent is not a land grab. It is a promise made by one generation to another. We did not arrive with weapons. We arrived with biology and patience. Every world in that nebula is a testament to a species that planted a tree for shade it would never feel.
She gestured toward Margaret, who sat in the gallery with her blue flower, a living reminder of the promise.
She ties their entire history to this one document. How do we argue against that?
If you rule against us, you rule that hope across centuries is invalid. That our kind of patience has no place in the galaxy.
The Arbiter's crystalline face remained unreadable, but his note-taking had been relentless.
The court will now take the evidence under consideration. A verdict will be delivered in due course.
The chamber emptied slowly, every delegate knowing that whatever came next would reshape galactic law.
The court has reached a decision. All parties will return to the chamber immediately.
Margaret felt every heartbeat in her ears as she took her seat. The blue flower trembled in her hands.
5 centuries, all resting on a handful of words.
I will remember this moment. Whatever happens, it changes everything.
The Arbiter rose. The crystalline chamber dimmed, and every eye in the court fixed on the bench. Harriet Vance placed a steadying hand on Margaret's arm. The two women exchanged no words.
This court has considered all evidence, arguments, and historical context.
Margaret closed her eyes. A single tear traced its way down her cheek.
In the matter of the Vela Nebula and the patent of 1887, the court finds
The entire galaxy held its breath.
the patent of 1887 is valid and enforceable. The Vela Nebula, in its entirety, is human territory.
The chamber exploded. Some delegates stormed out in fury. Others, to their own surprise, began to applaud.
Thank you, Arthur Greaves. Thank you.
They actually did it. The humans won the biggest property case in history with a document from the Age of Steam.
500 years, Margaret. Your people did it.
No, Harriet, you did. All of us. All the way back to a Yorkshire hillside.
News of the verdict spread faster than any ship. Across the galaxy, worlds learned that a Victorian patent had claimed a nebula. Margaret sat quietly in the chaos, the blue flower still cradled in her hands. The greatest gift of her life was now complete. The Vela Nebula, once a pristine nursery, was now the largest human territorial claim in galactic history. And in the middle of it all, an old woman in a wool cardigan simply smiled. Within weeks, Earth's colonial authority unveiled settlement plans for the Vela Nebula. Colony ships were already under design.
14 worlds await, Margaret. The first settlement will be called Greaves Landing.
Margaret watched the broadcast from her office, the blue flower now pressed in a book beside her.
It's time. Let the next generation carry the long watch.
She submitted her retirement papers the next morning. The news spread gently through the scientific community.
You can't retire, Margaret. You are the living link to this project.
The living link must eventually break. They'll do fine without me.
At a ceremony in the Great Hall, Margaret received the Prometheus Medal for a lifetime of terraforming. She stood on the stage, the blue flower pinned to her gown, and smiled. Afterward, she returned to Yorkshire, walked the moors, and settled into the old observatory cottage. 2 years passed quietly. Margaret tended her garden, watched the stars, and read old letters from Greaves. One autumn morning, she did not wake. The housekeeper found her with a slight smile, a pressed blue flower beside her. The news traveled softly, as was her wish. No grand memorial, only a quiet service in the old observatory. Her coffin was carried past the brass telescope, then up the moor to the cemetery near the ruins. The headstone was simple Yorkshire granite. Its inscription, chosen by Harriet Vance, read, "She thought 500 years ahead." A single blue flower, freshly cut, was placed upon the earth. The wind swept across the moor, carrying the scent of heather and the distant memory of a clockwork timer still ticking somewhere in the Vela Nebula. She had seen none of the colonies, but she knew they were coming. That was enough. In the 14 worlds of the Vela Nebula, the oxygen she had helped create awaited its first human breath. Her epitaph was not just words on stone. It was the Vela Nebula itself, shining in the night sky, a promise kept. In the orbital shipyards of Earth, a colony vessel took shape. On its hull, in letters that would travel across the galaxy, was painted one name, the Margaret. At the launch ceremony, Harriet Vance stood before 1,000,000 gathered souls, the pressed blue flower pinned to her lapel.
52 years ago, a woman told this court that her species thinks in centuries. Today, we prove her right. Her headstone reads, "She thought 500 years ahead. This ship is the next 500.
The engines ignited. The crowds on Earth and a dozen stations erupted. The Margaret rose from the orbital cradle, its hull catching the light of a sun that had once shone on a Yorkshire hillside. Its destination, the Vela Nebula, 14 worlds and the first settlement, Greaves Landing. On the bridge, the captain touched the image of the blue flower etched onto the command panel. The Vela Nebula grew larger in the view screen, its green-gold clouds embracing the approaching ship. A single blue flower, taken from Margaret's own garden, rested in a transparent case on the bridge, her final passenger. The thrusters flared, and the Margaret left Earth orbit, carrying 5,000 colonists and one pressed blue flower in mission control. Harriet Vance watched until the ship was a speck of light.
Finish the journey, Margaret."
Deep in the ship, a holographic lesson began for the children of the first generation. The teacher recounted the story of Arthur Greaves, the clockwork probes, and a woman with a blue flower.
"She thought 500 years ahead. Now you are the next 500.
The children listened, wide-eyed, as the Vela Nebula appeared on the screen. Outside the viewports, the first tendrils of green-gold cloud kissed the hull. The captain ordered the ship into standard orbit around Greaves Landing. The long watch was over. A new one had begun. Somewhere on the bridge, in a transparent case, the blue flower seemed to glow. Dropships descended from the Margaret like seeds from a flower. Ceremonial ground was broken, the soil dark and rich with the work of century-old cyanobacteria. The first dome rose by sunset, its panels reflecting the green-gold glow of the nebula. In the central square, a bronze statue was revealed. Margaret, seated, a blue flower in her lap. The plaque read the same words as her headstone. She thought 500 years ahead. A school group from the first generation of colonists gathered around, listening to their teacher. The teacher said, she was a gardener. Children, she grew worlds. Above them, the Vela Nebula swirled, its clouds now a cradle of human life. The blue flower, long a symbol of patience, now grew wild on 14 worlds. And in a quiet churchyard in Yorkshire, another one rested on a grave, never wilting. 5 centuries of Yorkshire winters had weathered the stone, but the inscription held fast. Every morning, a fresh blue flower rested at its base. No one knew who placed them, a child of the colony worlds, a student of Greaves, or simply a pilgrim. Behind the grave, The ruins of the old observatory still watched the sky. The brass was gone, the clockwork timer no longer ticking. But the span of their patience had become the measure of a civilization. In the night, the Vela Nebula rose over the churchyard, its green-gold glow unchanged, still human. And Margaret's flower, placed fresh each morning, was a quiet reminder. Some thoughts outlast stone. The moors remained, the wind carrying the same heather scent, and somewhere in the distance, a child was told the story of a woman named Margaret, who thought 500 years ahead, and the next 500 years were already waiting. The camera drew back from the Yorkshire grave beyond the earth, beyond the earth, beyond the orbit where the Margaret once rested. The Sunday became a distant star, and the Vela Nebula emerged, a green-gold jewel against the dark. It was no longer just a nebula. It was a monument to a species who thought in centuries. Within it, children on 14 worlds breathed air that Arthur Greaves had first imagined. The Milky Way galaxy enfolded it all, and on its spiral arm, a tiny green bloom told a story of patience. A single blue flower floated in the void, its petals catching the light of 1 billion suns. It was the same flower that once rested on a Yorkshire desk, and now it drifted across the light years. She thought 500 years ahead, and because she did, humanity's horizon became infinite. Some plans take a little patience, and then, in silence, the flower faded, and the screen went black.